Hey there, Scott Wilkinson here at CEDIA Expo 2013. I'm talking with Mike Heiss, a CEDIA fellow.
I'm jolly good.
And jolly good at that. Who has taught some classes here at CEDIA, and you've been wandering around the show. There's more than enough to talk about.
Aimlessly wandering the halls of CEDIA. Been to every one of them. I'm one of the few people left that's actually been to every one of these things.
Wow, every CEDIA?
Every CEDIA, and it's really, really changed. In the origins of CEDIA, it was kind of the guys who did big home theaters.
Right.
And they still do that, and I know you've seen some of them here,
right.
But it's really expanded into a lot more than that. Home automation, home control, distributed audio and video, not just that one big fancy room, but how do you get it around the house?
Right, exactly. And we were talking with Dennis Erskine, one of the board members, who said that the population, the attendee numbers have grown and the exhibitor numbers have grown.
Yes.
So it indicates some health in the industry, so I'm glad of that.
And more importantly, a big growth in the numbers. CEDIA is not just a trade show, it's also a lot of education. As you mentioned, I teach some of the courses.
Exactly.
And they have a huge increase in the number of educational hours consumed because there is a lot of new technology, so there's a body of people out there that can assist people, like your readers who like to do a lot of stuff on their own, but sometimes you just don't want to hang that set or you just don't know how to do something.
Right.
And that's what the CEDIA folk are all about.
Exactly. So tell us about the classes that you've been teaching.
Well, I do one sort of famous show, the Mikey Show, every year, which is my new technology update, where we're talking a lot about 4K and HDMI 2.0 were perhaps the two biggest topics in that, because the community here, which is a great superset of the AVS community, they're interested in what's happening there. Where's the content coming from? What do I do with this? How do I sell it? These guys sell stuff. How do they sell it in the absence of a lot of content right now?
Which we are currently in a situation where we've got plenty of displays, or more and more every day almost, but no content almost.
Although I think the other part of that is people say, well, a big display, 4K is only good in a big display.
Right.
And to some extent that's true, but one of the things I mentioned in one of my courses, which is very important for people to make note of, is that 4K is not just about the number of pixels. It's about the increased color space and the fact that I don't remember it's been a long show, I don't remember the exact figures, but if you look at the CIE color space, which I trust a lot of your viewers are familiar with, that if you compare the HD space,
which is called Rec 709,
to the DCI space, which is called the DCI space,
right,
or RGB Adobe color, to Rec 2020,
which is the proposed color space for 4K,
which we'll arguably call 4K. And if anyone is interested, that is available on the internet. The search out the ITU Rec 2020, and honey, I can't sleep past the Rec 2020 document. But it's very informative, and it has the comparison of the triangles to the CIE, that's space, and DCI, which is the Digital Cinema Initiative, is about 54%, I believe, of the CIE 1394. Rec 2020 is 75%. So you'll actually see more and better color with 4K than you will in a DCI cinema. And that, in some respects, is as important or maybe more important than, but it's got four times the pixels.
Right.
And people really need to be aware of that, and the increased color depth. So Rec 2020 is recommending 10-bit, not 8-bit,
right,
or maybe 12-bit,
maybe even 12-bit,
and 60 frames. And there's one guy that wants not 60 hertz or 120, but 300.
300 frames per second?
Yeah.
Yikes.
Now, in film, that sucks up a lot of film, but nobody shoots film anymore.
Nobody uses film anymore. The reason they chose 24 to begin with was it was the lowest number that they could get away with and have what more or less looks like fluid motion, so that they could conserve on film stock.
Right, or the other, and I think it's more of sort of a, not an old wives' tale, an urban legend, an apocryphal story, that when the guys, you see the old movies, the guys doing this, that they found that was the most reliable rate that a guy could hand crank
the old movie camera. Wow.
And the projector on the other side.
Right.
So that was as important a standard as a thing that you said. Or maybe it's an old wives' tale.
Well, it's hard to say.
But there was a lot of focus, no pun intended, on that. And that was one of the things that people need to be aware of when they're saying, should I switch to 4K? Maybe a topic for another time.
Maybe so. I mean, I never want to discourage early adopters because they fund.
But
yes,
there's a little hitch that's coming along.
Yeah.
And we're talking about HDMI 2.0.
Yes, exactly.
And that's something that is a big hot topic. And I wouldn't say I taught a course, but I led a course that the participant was Jeff Park from HDMI LLC, who was one of the guys that is in the
behind,
body.
Yeah,
He's behind it. And one of the main things about that is you a manufacturer, you a dealer, cannot say HDMI 2.0.
I know that HDMI licensing has really tried hard to get away from a numbering scheme.
So here's the danger, Will Robinson. You need to be careful as a consumer, especially in the early adopter phase, to say which are the attributes out of this bucket of stuff. It's 2160, as Joe would say, 2160p,
yeah,
in deference to our pal Joe Kane.
Yes.
But is it 30 frames? Is it 60 frames? Is it 8-bit color? Is it 10-bit color? Is it 12-bit color? Is it 420, 422, or 444?
Right.
May sound like gibberish to some people, but as Yogi Berra would say, those who need to know what it is, know what it is. And that comes to the question of upgradability.
Yes.
And some of the manufacturers, at least two here at the show and one not here, have said that they're offering upgrades to 2.0. Well, they're really not. They're offering upgrades to the ability to pass 2160p 60 420 8-bit. And the bandwidth that requires can be passed through, Steve Venuti, cover your ears, HDMI 1.4b.
Correct.
Because of the bandwidth requirement.
In fact, Sony demonstrated that at a press event in New York.
Yes.
And they were showing 2160p at 60 hertz, and everyone went, wait, I thought you couldn't do that with 1.4. You had to go to 2.0.
And the bandwidth is there to do it. Now, the upgrade, that their flash upgrade that they're going to make available, probably does some other things that helps that get passed. But there's a line,
right?
And you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 standards stacked up here, and although some of them are 2160p, once you go below that, you're going to need the bandwidth capacity, and
you're going to need HDMI 2.0, sorry.
You're going to need
hardware.
Chips,
right,
and board layout that are capable of, when this thing comes in, wait, what are you? Oh, okay, I know what you are. Okay, I'll pass that on to the TV.
Right.
And that's what will require a hardware, as well as a sort of side part of this topic, also for another discussion, HDCP, which is the content protection.
Right.
And there's a general feeling that the Hollywood community will require HDCP 2.2. It's nothing that a consumer can ask for.
Right.
It's either there or not.
What is it? What is the current version number that people are using?
I believe 1.4.
Okay.
But you could ask the manufacturers till you're blue in the face, and you'll never or 3,400 degrees in the face, and
No, more like 9,000 degrees in the face.
Well, that's if you're very bright. Or if you're blue.
Or if you're blue, exactly.
Exactly. But we digress.
Indeed.
But you can't ask for that. They won't tell you. They don't know. My suspicion, and it is only my speculation, that the two newer Sony sets had that baked into the chip. That is something that, because of the cryptography, cannot be upgraded by firmware.
Right.
So they probably had that baked into the chips. They can blow down an upgrade that'll let it do what it needs to do up to the, it's
the pipe is that big.
And are you making the pipe bigger, or are you keeping the pipe the same size, but being able to, frozen orange juice? Is it a pitcher of orange juice, or is it a little can and you add water?
Right.
So I suspect that that's how they were able to pass that on, where some of the older sets have to go back for a hardware update because they need the new chips.
And this is why I think Samsung probably has the best idea with this Evolution kit.
Yes.
That they can plug in, you have all your HDMI hardware in this little module that you slap on the back, and all of a sudden you have the hardware you need to do the 18 gigabits per second as opposed to the 10 gigabits per second.
And the 600 megahertz bandwidth. There
Correct.
are two things
Yes.
that are interrelated there.
Right.
And that's, again, where you pass that, if you will, line in the sand. Once you go above or below, depending on how you look at it, that's where you can't get away from having to have
new hardware,
and new hardware, and the chips aren't here yet,
right?
And they won't be here for a while. So the evolution module, I'm speculating again, has a means of getting into the innards of the set. You won't be able to buy a module and just plug it into the existing thing because it won't go anywhere.
Right. Okay, well, in the couple minutes we have left, what have you seen or learned as you've been wandering aimlessly about the show?
One of the things that was interesting is that I know you've spoken about the Samsung and LG curved OLEDs. Sony has come out with a curved, but it's an LED illuminated LCD.
Right.
But with the triluminous and local dimming, and it's not bad.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the main differences, other than it's $39.99 and it's 65 inches, which is considerably less expensive than the OLEDs.
And larger to boot.
And it has something the other two don't, which is VESA wall mount provisions.
I know
LG,
this.
LG and Samsungs, you can't wall mount. The Sonys, you can. Or the Sony, the E1, you can.
Wow. Okay, well, that is a significant advantage if you ask me. I thought that the Samsung and the LG you couldn't wall mount because it's curved and so difficult to do, but I think it's more because I learned recently that they're permanently attached to their base.
Yes, and the curve really isn't that. I mean, if you look at it, it's not that huge.
I saw the LG at the press event you and I were both at, and I got the impression that its curve was more gentle, was less than the Samsung, which I've actually spent some more time with.
Sure.
And I didn't like the curve of the Samsung. It affected the geometry.
It was just too much?
It was just too much. I haven't spent any time looking at the Sony. I have to go look at that.
But flat OLEDs are coming.
I hope so.
Or they're here, I should say they're not here in the U.S. LG said they're selling them in Korea. Mm-hmm. They showed a 77-inch OLED at IFA, no, flat.
Oh, I thought it was curved.
So 77 was flat.
Oh.
And it's huge and hugely expensive.
Yes, of course.
And it's a huge science project for now.
Right. Well, Mike, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you very much, Scott.
Really
Always a pleasure.